I recognize lots of the names, so welcome. This is Google Forms, Sheets, and Autocrat, so that's what we're going to work through, and we only have an hour, so we're gonna fly. All right, so I'm going to present really quick. Oops, this one. Okay, so you're going to want to go right away, and feel free. I don't care if you unmute and ask me a question. That's cool. If you need to get to something, go right away to this URL here, ppsurl.me/forums autocrat to get to the slide deck. You've got to go there in order to get to the Google form here. So I do need you to get there. I see you popping in. That's good. And once you're there, please click on that link to take the Google form and go in there and do it. It's short, but it's necessary for what we're going to talk about, the connection with all those things. Okay? Jump in there and do that. As you're doing that, I'm going to look for questions. And again, feel free to unmute and holler if you got something if you need it. Have fun taking the form. Nothing like making you work right away when you join my session instead of sitting back. If you're just joining or didn't hear me, you want to go to the link at the top of this presentation here so that you can then click on the Google form link. I see 5 or 6 of you have already finished the form. That's great. We'll wait a couple more minutes and then we'll go. All right. I think we're almost there. We have about 2 more minutes. Don't panic if you're one of the last ones trying to turn it in. It's okay. Just checking the list. Hey, who's peeking in there? I see you in that corner.
Do you have everything you need?
Yes, ma'am. All set. How you doing?
Peachy Keen Jelly Bean. All right,
Yep.
I'll let you get your forms on.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Bye. All right, looks like a couple more of you. I don't know if I see everybody in this grid or not, so keep going. Yeah, Dave. So Dave asked me a question. If some of you were peeking at your email, like I know like all of us will do during the whole thing, he asked if there was a little automated response, the email response, after you submitted the form, and the answer is yes. And so that's one thing we're going to talk about. So based on your answers, so first of all, as soon as you submitted the form, you're going to get an email from me, and then based on your answer would determine which email you got from me. And I'll show you how we do all that in just a minute. Cool? Everybody good to go, or we need to wait a minute for anything? You can use the silly little, not silly, whatever, the raise hand person or whatever, or put something in the chat for me, and I'm happy to slow down. All right. So what are we talking about? So Google Forms, Sheets, and Autocrat here. Basically, a lot of you might be familiar with Google Forms. You certainly have probably taken a Google form, just being in our district, that those go out all the time. The sheet, what I'm talking about, a sheet, is the spreadsheet that's connected to the form. So anytime you get data with a form, it goes onto a spreadsheet if you choose to go that way. Wave, say hi.
Hi.
Hi. He doesn't realize I'm presenting, so I'll talk to you later. All right, and then Autocrat is an add-on that you can add onto your spreadsheets to do some cool stuff later, kind of like mail merge stuff. So if you've all, some of you have still doing mail merges, that kind of thing, Autocrat is the tool to be able to do mail merges with Google Sheets. Cool. All right, so this is just generic help information if you need to get a hold of me or anything like that. I'm gonna kind of steer away from this presentation, the actual slideshow, in just a minute as we jump in to look at how to do all of this stuff. But this, you can get back to this as much as you need to, so it's handy to hold on to. Just briefly right here, if you didn't know or you weren't aware, there is a training site that I and others kind of contribute to, but mainly I take care of and add documents and help tutorials and things like that to anything Skyward related. I know this isn't Skyward related, but just so you're aware, if you do need anything, email me obviously today in the chat. You can do that, and we're going to jump right in. Now, here with forms, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about like how to set up forms and how to make them, because that's getting to be more and more common knowledge. Apologize if you don't know much about forms yet, but we're going to look at it and we're going to take a little time to do it. But the back side of this, how to do those automated emails and all those kinds of things, that's where we want to spend the majority of our time. So if you have access, you're always going to have access to this presentation. There are some great links in here for, why you might want to use forms or some other ideas, that kind of thing. So what we're going to do is you want to be logged into Google, have this Google slideshow, on a tab, open up a new tab. And what you want to do is you want to go to drive.google.com, and I can do that for you if you want. So I'll just go to my Drive, for example. And in the top left-hand corner, we're just going to make a quick form. You can follow along and that kind of thing. We're just going to make something really fast. For whatever reason, Google, when they show you the options, they're only going to show you kind of like this stuff right away. So Google Forms is tucked underneath the More, and then you'll see Google Forms. Okay, so what you want to do is, again, we're in Drive right now. I just kind of, like as a default, I kind of always just click on My Drive, and you're going to hit the New button, More, Google Forms. I'll click on that, and what you'll see is just kind of a blank slate for forms. And what you can type this, anything you want, my sample form, my practice form, or whatever. You give it a name. I usually don't wait for my name to like populate up there in the left-hand corner, but it does, like as soon as you click on it. I always think it's going to say untitled form, and that's going to be like my, my file name or something like that. Here is where you just start typing questions. So for today's purposes, we want just something super simple. like 2 or 3 questions, similar to the form that I just made you do. You can say, what's your last name, whatever you want to do. I'm not going to go over a lot about, again, like I said, making forms, but there are lots of different choices for your questions. So if you noticed, when I started typing here, it kind of knew what I was doing, and it kind of flipped to a short answer text. It kind of decided that for me. I could do a multiple choice. What's your last name? Pick your last name out of the list. Obviously, that's not appropriate for the question. So short answer down here. If you were to collect something like an email address, what you can do is, see, it's going to do the short answer text kind of like by default. Down here is a little, in the snowman controls here, I will mention this, is you can click on a response validation, and you can say, yeah, this should be text, and this should be an email address. That's one tip that you could use. Now, if you're working within your own organization, so you're only sending the form out to Portage students or Portage staff members, you can, up in the settings, choose to automatically collect email addresses, and you actually don't have to use it as, put it in as a separate question. So you can get that data. For today, what I'm going to do is what I did for you is I made you type your email address in, even though I know mainly Portage employees, but there might be some others out there that are not Portage employees. So I made it a separate question. You don't have to, especially if you're working within your own organization. Once you have a question, you can hit the plus on the right to give yourself another question. If you knew you were going to do a similar question, you can hit this little guy at the bottom that's a duplicate tool, and it will give you an exact copy of the question before. In this case, I probably wouldn't want to do that because it was email address, but maybe I want last name, and I would take away some of that validation. So build yourself a form, just 2 or 3 questions really quick. I think I've got a question, so I'm going to go double check that. Oh, just somebody else that wanted to join. We'll use the Google form that you're going to make right now. We'll use a little bit later and try to get some responses for you so you have some data to work with. So right now, if you just joined us, Sarah, or I can't remember who the name was that just popped in, we're just making a simple Google form. So you would just go to drive.google.com. I usually start in my Drive and then new Google form. You have to kind of hit mouse over the more option and then go to Google Forms. Once you've got a 2 or 3 question form, you're good to go. We'll talk about the options in a minute of what you're going to do with that. Again, if you got any questions, throw them in the chat, or feel free to unmute and holler at me. It's cool. Do about 1 more minute, and then we'll go on. And I apologize if I'm moving too fast. It's kind of the nature of this beast today. When you're done, you can go back over to the Meet window where I'm presenting, and you'll see the next slide that I'm on. Basically, it's just support for you. So a lot of the remaining slides in this presentation are for you, for when you go back and you forget everything that we talked about today, and then you want to work on the form and connect it with Autocrat, and what did he say, and I can't remember. It's all in here. So even from the basics of going through forms, the different question types that you can do, because obviously I'm not spending a lot of time talking about all of the different things that you can do with a Google form. I'm focusing more on the back end of what you can do with the data. But here's a lot of different really good tutorials about it. Most of these are from Google themselves, from their Learning Center. And again, so you got some basic stuff, and then this slide goes into some more intermediate or advanced information. Cool, and here we are. Now, when you're done with your form, up in the top right-hand corner, you have some options. Obviously, everyone wants to, customize their theme and get a pretty background or whatever. I don't know who we got to talk to at Google for having this kind of like weird, is that purple periwinkle? I don't know, but you can choose your form options. You got all kinds of fun stuff. That's just going to make people hungry or snacky. Here you go. So pick something, insert, and it changes your theme for you. So that's fancy stuff, although I don't like black and white, but we'll change that later. The eyeball up there just allows you to preview your form, which is really pretty nice because you can kind of see what it looks like for others. A lot of times that will help you go back and fix your form to what you really wanted to do or how you really wanted to ask that question. I highly recommend doing that if you're trying to decide between multiple choice or check boxes or those questions of like, hey, rate from 1 to 10 on a range of what your experience level is with it or whatever. Those kinds of things, definitely dig into what the question types are, but then preview your form, and then you can just close it. You actually can submit data to your own form as well if you want to. So that was the kind of the preview link. Again, the gear, I'm not going to do too much in this, but I was just kind of letting you know kind of how you control what people they can do with the form or not. And some of these things down here you would have to choose basically on the purpose of your form. Are you going to let them edit their submission after they submitted it, or what are you going to let them see, that kind of thing? Are you going to limit people to one response? Am I restricting this to users in Portage Public Schools? Typically, I uncheck that if I'm doing this kind of a session where others might join, that kind of thing. The presentation of it just kind of gives you, some options there. This is where you can type in your nice message to your respondents, that kind of thing. I'm not going to talk about quizzes. You can turn forms into quizzes. Just know that you can do that. That's for another time. So check that out if you're ever interested in that. All right. And then there's another kind of set of generic settings or preferences over in the kind of the snowman, the 3 dots on the right. But basically, we've kind of made through all of those things. One thing that's super nice over there is to make a copy. So when you've got a nice form that you've got ready, maybe you've put a lot of work into it and you want something similar, but you need to change a few things, it's nice to be able to have the option to make a copy, just like Google Docs, Sheets, or Slides. All right, so when you're ready, what I want you to do, when your form's kind of like just 2 or 3 questions, click the Send button. And then right here at the top, there's an option. Instead of email, you just click on this little guy that looks like a link. Typically, I shorten the URL, and I want you to copy that link, or you can come back to it and copy it in a minute. And if you then jump back over to our slideshow, right on slide, looks like number 8, there's a link right here that will take you to a place where we can all paste the URL or the link to our forms. So if you click on that, you're going to see, all right, so Sarah's in there, anonymous, whatever. So what you do to be able to do that is just in the bottom right-hand corner, you're just going to click. It will give you a little, kind of like a Post-it note, and you can just paste. You can Control-V, right-click, paste, whatever, or you can type something in there if you want. Okay, so yep, my form. So what's going to happen now is we're going to get some of these in here, and then if you would, jump in and click on a couple of the forms and give them some responses. So give some responses to the people that were in there. You all tracking with me? We doing okay?
Hey,
All right.
Ryan, back up a sec.
Yep.
When you get to to actually paste it into that thing. I got lost.
Okay. Yep. So bottom right-hand corner. Well, it's seeing mine in here.
Oh, bottom right-hand corner. I got you.
There's a little plus down here. I'm not seeing it right now. So it's probably because, where'd mine go? Right here. I'm gonna get rid of that. It's not showing me mine. Maybe if I refresh it, it'll yeah. So the bottom right-hand corner, you can click on that. That plus turns into a little pencil. And once you click that, then it gives you a little Post-it or a pad or whatever to be able to paste your link. All right, so if you would, jump into just a couple of those forms, answer their questions just so we have a little bit of data to work with, and then we'll be able to jump in and talk about the other stuff. And I'm going to actually move on to this. If it looks like I'm ignoring you, I'm just looking at my other monitor over here so I can do your forms. Oh. Maybe just a couple more minutes, and then we'll jump off of that and move on. Those are good questions. And now I'm hungry. Thanks a lot. I like the also cats, you fool. Like, what's better, cats or dogs? Look at everybody. I don't know. Oof. Hopefully I got the math questions right.
One storage.
All right, let's go on delivery. I'm presenting your unrecorded. Number 2 out of 4, so maybe we'll get to all 4 to come in. I don't know. I probably should have mentioned I was doing something this morning. Cool. I think I was able to take everybody's in there that put one in there. So we're going to move on. If you want data from me, bother me or let me know or throw it in the chat, and I'll jump over there and make sure I get it. Anybody, or how are we doing? Anybody need anything right now? Good to go? It's like kind of impossible to gauge that in this. Here we go. All right. So basically, now that you've got a little data in your form, we'll go over and kind of look at what I do with the responses and then talk about that connection to Google Sheets. And so again, the document here kind of gives you some of that. I'm going to actually go into the form that I sent you all at the beginning. So here's the original Google form that you took at the very beginning of this, with some legit questions, and then of course the silly question at the end. So talking about responses just a little bit, if you click on, if you didn't notice it was there before, you've got your questions that you were working on when you were building your form, but then there's also a responses tab. And here, you know, you can do some things that are nice because you can just scroll, and at a glance, you can see, based on how you set your questions up, you can kind of see some cool data right away. You can see some nice visual representation of who's in your audience, if that's what you were after with the form, or you know, whatever questions you were asking. So this data is nice right away. And then here we go. Let's see. Wow. Broncos and lots of Wolverine fans. And not many Spartan fans. Wow. One? Ouch. Okay. Well, some of you are going to be a little surprised at what you got from me in just a minute. So how did I connect it to a sheet, a Google spreadsheet? That's up here in this right-hand corner. The view the responses in the sheets. If you didn't see that, the first time you make your form, you'll be able to click on that and decide where you want that to go. If you have an old form that you would like to disconnect from an old spreadsheet and connect it to a new one, you can do that by clicking up there in the top right-hand corner, and you can select the response destination. And then right here, you can create a brand new spreadsheet, or you could select the existing spreadsheet. So it would allow you to use the same form that you had before and put the data on a new spreadsheet. Okay. Once we get that from there, if I were to click on the link to go to the spreadsheet right here, I already have that tab open, so I'm just going to show you. So here's kind of what it goes. It lands on the spreadsheet for me. I have everybody that responded, and then I have the information here ready to go. And I'm going to jump right over into Autocrat. Again, holler, and I'll try to keep checking the questions if we need them. So again, back on the form, I just hit the responses tab and went to the spreadsheet, view response and sheets. If I click that, it's going to open the same spreadsheet for me. Okay. Oops. Didn't mean to click FaceTime. Or close the FaceTime call. How about that? All right. So got the data arranged. It's nice because it shows you a timestamp. That was not I didn't have a question in my form that asked the date and the time that the submission was entered. That does that for me automatically. The rest of these columns across the top are all questions that I asked. Now, to do the magic of moving that data to Autocrat, we got to grab an add-on. If you don't already have the add-on for Autocrat, you're going to want to do that. So back to your form. Click on responses. Go ahead and connect the spreadsheet if you haven't done that already. Once you're in your spreadsheet, you're going to want to click on add-ons. And if you don't already see Autocrat, you're going to want to click Get Add-ons. Once you do that, if you don't see it at the top of the list, it's a simple search up in the top. And it's a very popular one, and so it will be working. And it's this guy right here. I'm going to check the chat just in case I left anybody on the dust on that one. But basically, you have to make the connection to the Autocrat tool from your spreadsheet because it's an add-on for Google Sheets. So click on that. You'll have to say, you know, yes, I allow whatever. Say yes to those questions, and you can go from there. Cool. All right. We're going to move back on. And again, if you look kind of back at this, you know, the slideshow, it's got some information for you about, and a little screenshot about how to get that add-on. The screenshot's a little old. You can see their image changed from what we were just looking at a minute ago. But it is Autocrat by New Visions Cloud Lab. That's the one you want. There's only one called Autocrat. Cool. All right. So in my spreadsheet, I'm going to actually launch Autocrat or open that. Now, I will warn you a little bit, in previous times when I've tried to do this presentation, Autocrat can be a little slow to get through while I'm presenting it for some reason. So just keep that in mind. So here, basically, I'm going to just kind of talk through all of these different jobs really quick. So basically what you do is you set up what's called a merge job. Merging your data that you collected with your form that's sitting on your spreadsheet, you're merging it onto a document that you already have pre-built. Okay, so you have something, ideally you have it pre-built already. And I'll show you those examples in just a second. So because I changed up the document that I sent you based on your answer to that last question, I then had to, in order to pull that off, I had to make separate jobs for each one of those responses. Okay, and we'll just look at one or two of them just to kind of keep it simple. And you don't have to do conditional stuff. So if they answer whatever, send them this one. You can just do a generic document and you'll be good. So I'm going to show you my Go Green document first. Ideally, what you want to do is have this in mind, kind of have a vision for what you want the document or whatever you're sending the person, the PDF, or maybe you're not even sending it to them. Maybe you're just producing it, making Autocrat do that and not even sending it over email. But you want to know kind of your end result. You want to have an idea of what you want it to look like first. So this honestly is a lot of the work, is setting up your document first for the data to go on to. So you can see I just typed something super generic. Thanks for submitting the form, blah, 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 blah. I'm basically just giving you a result of what you answered in the question. And then the key is that I use these little guys here. My mouse isn't working. These little data tags to the left and right of all of these basically fields. So what we're going to do in a minute is I'm going to hook this document up with the spreadsheet. And what Autocrat is going to force me to do is say, okay, well, where should I put the data from column C on your spreadsheet? Where should I put that on your document? And that's why you need these fields. If you put the little carrots, the data carrots to the left and right of these different things, when you connect it in Autocrat, it will recognize that these are supposed to be data fields. These are supposed to be places where I want it to put the data. So it's pretty much just a simple Google Doc, typed out, formatted how I wanted it, with these the little extra data tags around the thing. So I'm going to edit my job at first. You would click, add or new job. And honestly, you probably should just watch this for a few minutes instead of trying to go along with me or do it side by side. You'll want to watch for a minute. So I have to just name the job. And the reason it's asking you to name the merge job is because obviously, like you saw, you can have multiple things going on at once based on how you want things to happen. So I did a separate job that says Go Green. So if the one person in this group that chose Michigan State, you got this one. And so basically I just give it a name, I click next, and here's where I connect it to a document. And the nice thing about if you were working on your Google Doc right before you set this up, when you click from Drive, it sees your most recent documents that you've been working on. And so you're easily able to grab that. I've done quite a bit more work since then, and then here's all of your documents of the stuff that you guys turned in. But the nice thing is that you work on it pretty recently. Here's my template, and I would just click select. I've already selected that, so I'm not going to click select, but it would just be you pick out your template document, click select, and move on to the next step. Here's where it is looking at document versus your spreadsheet and figuring out, okay, I see all these places where you put the fields on the document, and then here are all my columns. This is the part where if it slows down, I'll go over and play the YouTube video for you that I've got in my presentation, because this sometimes can be the lagging part. I'll give it like just about another minute, see if it does its thing. Again, holler if you got any questions, throw them in the chat. Don't be shy to put it on mute or unmute and let me know as well. All right, so I'm going to open my as well. Just going to shut it down, open it again. Probably got too many tabs open and all kinds of stuff going on here. Okay, there's my job. Edit that. Next, this is where you select your document. Next, okay. So here's the fields. So basically, the fields in the middle here are the ones that it's seeing on my document. Okay, on my template document, my Google Doc. Over on the right, it's showing me the columns from my spreadsheet. So it's asking me, okay, so what does first name, this thing from your document, what does that map to? And if it can tell what it is, it's going to pick those for you automatically. But like this one, for example, on my document it says school. The question on my sheet was, what school do you work at? So I would have to select that. I had to select it before. It didn't automatically know what it was. When it's the same word like email address or first name, it's fine. Then it will just go right over. So basically what I have to do is spend just a couple seconds here matching up and selecting the right column from the spreadsheet that I want to use, and take that data that you submitted on the form and plop it onto that space on my document. So I'm just matching these up. When you're done with that, you would click next. Now here's kind of where it gets into some cool stuff, because I can name the files that it's going to create right off the bat. So basically, let me go back one step. Yep. So my file name, I just said, name it just TeachCamp 2020, put a dash, and then put their first name here. If you notice this blue bar off to the left, if I click on that, it's got all of the things that I asked. So it's got all of the data tags for me. And what you can do is you can just click on this, and when you click on it just once, it copies it to your clipboard. So what I can do then is I can simply just paste it right there. So that's kind of nice. I could do, you know, the file name, I could name it, and then last name, whatever. Here's where I choose what I want it to do. So basically, you know, once the job runs, puts the data on the document, do I want it to produce a Google Doc, or do I want it to produce a PDF? Up to you. I left it as a Google Doc. Almost all of this, when I was doing these, I left the default options as they were. The multiple output mode, this means that it's going to produce one document for every single response. So you get your own separate document. You know, someone else didn't get yours. You didn't get someone else's, that kind of thing. We'll talk about single output mode toward the end if we have time. So multiple output mode is what I select, and I hit next. Again, I am recording this, and this is also in a video already in the slide presentation. So you can get back to how to do this. This is where you're going to choose your folder, and I highly recommend, if you're doing this with like a large group of people, or you're going to have a large amount of documents, that kind of thing, I definitely recommend, just like the setting up the Google Doc ahead of time, you want to set up your folders ahead of time. So not only did I have TeachCamp 2020 set up, I had a folder tucked inside of that folder specifically for the form responses, the documents, and the things like that that it spit out. So you just use this button here to choose your folder where it's going to go. Step 6, I have never used. I've never used a dynamic folder reference. I would like to see an example of how or why to use that. So far, I have not needed it. Step 7 is where I'd set up the condition that said if you answered, the last question a certain way, you would get a certain document. And so basically what I did was I clicked add condition, and then right here it asked me, okay, so what condition do you want? I went to the question that I asked you, and then I just, in order to get this exactly right, because it says, whatever here's the question, the response equals this over on the right. I wanted to make sure I got it right, so I went to the Google form. I went right back to my document, and I literally copied whatever question I asked or whatever answer I gave you as an option here. So I copied that and I pasted that into this condition here. I'm going to delete this one, but that's what I did. So I said, yes, the condition is if they answer this question this way, give them the document that I linked in this merge job. So that's the complicated part. You do not have to do this at all. You could still produce, one document per person and email that to everybody that responds to your form. You do not need merge conditions. I'll talk to you about a little bit another example of a merge condition later. But basically, that's kind of a fancy move. You don't have to do that. Next, this is the kind of the last spot. One more place after this. Do I want to share the document? Yes. If I selected no, look at everything that goes away. So in order to do the email and all of that kind of stuff, I have to say yes, I want to share it. What do I want to share? Do I want it when it gets to you? I said that's fine. They can edit it if they want to. I don't need it. Depending on your purpose or what you're going to do, you may or may not want people to edit that. So you have the option here to choose. Are you going to allow those people to then reshare that document that you send? This is by default. Yes, I left it at that. No big deal. Send from a generic no reply address. That's kind of a nice option if you're sending this out to a large group of people. I left it at no, and actually down here, I CC'd myself. So all of those emails that went to you, I got a copy of. Mainly because I want to make sure it's working right. Again, here, this blue banner, I see this again. So what I did was just clicked on email address and pasted that right there. So I knew that I'm getting your exact data, your exact email address. I don't have to type everyone's email address in here. I don't have to do a giant list or anything like that. In fact, I want it to be just like this so that it's your response and only your response. Down below, you can customize the email. So this is like the subject line. And then everything here that is in the writing, you can choose to do this however you want to do it. Okay. And again, right here, you see first name. I grabbed over here again and pasted it into the body of the email. Okay, the last step along the way is how I got it to do all of this once you submitted the form. And that's the answer to this first question. Run on form trigger. I said yes. So that means as soon as the form is submitted, it's going to run through and do all of this work for me, and I don't have to go through and do that. I do not have to have that set to yes. I can always have this on no, and this is the last step in the setup of this job. So I'm going to go back to the main screen really quick. Well, before I leave this, you could also run this on a time trigger, and you could say basically at the end of every day, or every hour as you're collecting all these responses, sweep through and do the merge. You could do that as well. I've found that the form trigger is pretty reliable, and I've never had any issues with it, and so I've just always done it that way. But I know there are others that do the time trigger. So run on the form trigger. Again, you don't have to do any trigger at all, because back here, right here on your list of jobs, you've got a little play button. And if I selected that, notice that it says run job. So I can basically manually run this as I see fit or as I want to do it. Okay. I know we're getting close already. It's 11:45. I want to make sure you guys get a chance to answer any questions. There's just a couple more things that I want to show you. Obviously, we flew through this. It's going to take a little bit of practice on your part to get used to forms if you're not used to forms, but working with Autocrat in the spreadsheet so that you get used to it. The last one down here, the certificate slides. So the other option besides a Google Doc is you can actually do Google Slides. I'm going to kind of try to breeze through this really quick. So here's where I selected single output mode. Basically what this example does is takes the data from all of your responses, makes one giant Google Slides presentation, and each slide is just one of your responses. So each one of you would be a separate slide in this slideshow. And that's single output mode. Single output means I'm making one file, if you will. And so I do still have to have a template for that, all of that kind of stuff. And on this one, same kind of things I didn't do. You'll notice I didn't do any kind of merging conditions. I didn't do any kind of special fancy stuff. I did still set up an email to be able to send to you. But right here on the last page, I did not want it to run right away. Okay, so I want it to be a something that I run manually. So if I go back, the one at the bottom here, certificate slides, this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to run and do its job. So that's a manual run of the job. It's not working on any kind of trigger. To give you a glimpse at that, it's going to look like this. This is the template for it. And I did share templates for you for both the docs and Google Slides in the presentation. Same kind of thing. It's just a Google slide with the data carrots in it, formatted however I want it. Cool. All right. I know that's a lot. So do we want to look at anything specifically? I purposely tried to push us through this so you had a little time to do the evaluation at the end, and then you also got a chance to kind of see Autocrat, because that's where the most of the brain stuff happens. I'm going to go back here just for a second. I wanted to point out that there are some documents here. If you want to look at those, I think they're fairly old, but you can open that template and just click Use Template in the right-hand corner if you wanted like a starting point or something like that. Sorry for the blatant Michigan State stuff. If you're clearly only one person is a fan in here, so whatever. Same thing, I gave you a slide template as well. Again, it shows you the where to get the add-on for Autocrat. And then down here at the end, there are some really nice Autocrat tutorials for you. This is kind of like a user guide, but then there also is an actual video here on YouTube of the creators of Autocrat kind of walking you through how they did a setup for a Google Slides merge as well. And it's nice because it walks through all of the steps that I just walked through. More examples here. So here were the kind of step-by-step guides for Autocrat, but then here it's kind of some more, just some ideas. And then last but not least, the session reflection and evaluation form for you all. So we have about 10 minutes left. We can do whatever you all want to do. Any questions that you want to ask or anything you want to back up and take a look at again, let me know and we can do that.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, hey Sarah.
I was curious if you can generate two sets of documents from the same set of data. So like if I want to use Autocrat to send a very specific response to
Yes.
any people who input data, but then also B, like let's say I'm collecting images of artwork. Can I also have Autocrat make like a second set of like slides, like a slideshow, for example? Like, can I run multiple Autocrat documents off of the same Excel spreadsheet?
Yes. Yep. So if I open Autocrat again here, that's basically what I did, because for every one of your answers to that last question, I had a separate document, and then I also had the PowerPoint or the Google Slides show, and they're all all of these things right here that are listed. They're
It's
all running. It's
data.
all off of this data,
Yeah.
in the same spreadsheet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different docs that are like this. So if you answered the, I don't cheer for any team, then this is the one you got. So that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So as
All
long
up
as
to-
you
okay.
set up the templates ahead of time,
Right.
then you're going to be able to go through and hook those up. Basically, I would add a new job here, give it something else, and then it's that step where I'm connecting that template document, and that's going to determine what I do. The big thing about the conditional formatting, so in other words, you could, even if you didn't even do like conditional formatting, like they have to answer this way to get this document, you don't have to do that. So this is your data, right? So you could not only, produce a document like I did, like one of these that gets emailed to someone, you could produce a separate document that doesn't get shared with anybody. It just is made for you.
Yeah.
And so, there could be a difference there. Same set of data, same spreadsheet. You can do multiple
Just
things
make
with
it
it.
a reference document almost.
Yep.
That
Yep.
exactly answers my question. Thank you. And then I have one more quick greedy question too, because I'm using Autocrat right now for not just Portage Public Schools, but for the Michigan Art Education Association.
Yeah.
We had to go online this year for our statewide exhibitions. And
Right.
I'm sort of trying to pitch Google Forms with Autocrat to them as an option to replace some of the really expensive software platforms that are out there, like Cafe and Submittable and stuff like that. But we're running into the problem where if people submit images, they need a Google email address. Have you run into that at all? Can you?
I haven't tried to collect files like you're talking about. Like, haven't, and that makes sense that you're running into that hurdle. So it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. It makes sense because it's specific tool that's working with Google Drive stuff, right? It's working with Google Docs, Google Sheets. That's really what the add-on is made for. It's a Google add-on. So it's forcing you into, someone having that Google account.
And it's even dumping all of the files into a Google Drive folder, come to think of it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. That lets me know that I'm not effing it up.
Right. Exactly.
There. Thank you so much. Those are my 2 questions.
Cool. One thing I did want to mention too, kind of another example of the conditional formatting. Jason Messenger from West Middle School had this question, I think last year at Teach Camp. He was saying, can we collect this data on this spreadsheet, and then can I add a column on the spreadsheet? So it's not on the form, it's my own column that says like complete or turned in or whatever. And the answer is yes, you can add your own column here. So I could add a column, right into my spreadsheet, call it whatever I want. And whatever I put in here, say I type something like complete. When I go back over to my add-ons into Autocrat, then I can have something that says, if I answered, if you see complete in this column, then send the data or, whatever. So that's another example of the conditional formatting piece that it might take you a little bit to kind of wrap your brain around, but basically it doesn't have to be what you got off of the form. is basically the main point that I want to make. You could use the form as a tool to gather what you needed at first, and then some other folks on your team could then have access to this spreadsheet, put values on the spreadsheet, and then the form could run only if, or then the Autocrat job could run only if it sees a specific value in a column on that spreadsheet. If that makes sense. I know it's kind of a quick and dirty explanation of that, but that was Jason's question from last year that kind of led me down the path of the conditional formatting and figuring that piece out. And since then, I've used it for quite a few things. All right, well, if there's nothing else, and I want to make sure I get this in before we get to noon, that last slide in my presentation is the link to the Google form that you have to fill out in order to verify your session for PD and all that kind of stuff. So you're going to want to make sure that you do that sometime today or maybe before your next session, whatever works best for you. If anybody has anything, questions from here on out, remember you can email me, whatever. I think my email address was on that last slide as well. Maybe not. Nope, lied. It's up here earlier. Right there, sorry. Help desk ticket works too, but email address, if you got a specific autocorrect question, like I said, you're gonna have to dig in a little bit, do something like a sample run of Autocrat, merging data, kind of get a document together, kind of see how it works, get the feel for it a couple times, and then you're pretty much ready to go. It's not too terrible once you get used to it, and it seems like a whole lot when you're looking at it at first, but once you get it to do it, it's pretty sweet what it can do for you. Anything else before we jump off of this? All right, guys. Well, thanks. Thanks for doing Teach Camp virtually. And hope you all are doing well and having a great summer. And we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks, guys.